The Secrets of Disney is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What's there, Mama?
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
How do you do?
How do you do what?
Show me the smile.
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
Very nice. You can sit by me.
Everything's so wonderful.
Come on, get up. Come on, get up.
Where are we going?
Up to Neverland.
You must kiss me.
Excuse me?
Please, princess.
One kiss.
Unless you beg for more.
Hi, I'm Lisa Hendey, and you are listening to The Secrets of Disney, where we talk about everything Disney, from theme parks to movies and shows. We delve deep into tips and information and fun discussions, and sometimes serious discussions too, as we explore the intersection of pop culture and faith. Today, we're going to have a conversation about some of the financial challenges and furloughs being faced at Disney, and also a little chat about Disney Plus too. And joining me on today's panel are my co-hosts and friends, Deborah Schaben. Hi, Debra.
Hello.
And David Handlos. Hi, David.
Hello.
Well, trying to be as upbeat as possible. We're on day who knows what of the coronavirus lockdowns, and I think we've all lost count at this point. And here on the podcast, we always talk about sort of fun things related to Disney, but I think it's fitting that we look at some of the financial challenges and the repercussions that this is having on not only families who had intended to visit the parks this spring, but especially on Disney employees that are really being impacted. And we're very blessed that Deborah has such a great background and maintains so many close relationships with Disney families. So I thought we could kind of tap into your expertise, Deborah, to lead us into this. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I can only speak to what I've heard in a few instances with people I know, but I having worked for Disney for so long, it's kind of like I kind of do know what's going to happen, or I can make some inferences of what's going to happen, and I have some information about rumors of how the new normal will be at Disney once everything starts to open back up again.
Those are the secrets that we want to know. Before we dive into that, though, I thought it would be kind of nice for us to maybe talk just a little bit about how this is impacting our own families. And we're, as we've talked about on previous podcasts, we're all kind of in different situations. So, David, how is your work being impacted by, what's going on with the COVID quarantines?
Well, we've been fortunate that my employer has just shifted us all to working from home. I'm an IT worker, so it's more seamless than some other jobs, but it has been a huge adjustment. And my wife works for a nonprofit that helps out families that need help with babies and with baby supplies, and so that's been a bigger stretch for her. So trying to do that's not something that can be necessarily done from home very well. So
is she still working, or is she kind of furloughed during this time?
Oh, they're working. Definitely, certainly reduced hours and just limited services, but trying to coordinate all the changes. That she's still working pretty much full time for the moment. They're probably have to reduce hours further, but it's a nonprofit that's been that's provided to at-risk families for about 40 years, and they're going to try and do it for as long as they can.
I think their services are probably needed now more than ever.
Exactly.
So, Deborah, in your day job, your side job, what's going on with you and work? I know last time we were together, you were working from home. Is that still the case?
Yes, and the weird thing is that so I work for the university system in Nebraska, and this week they decided to close entirely the university system, meaning I can't even go on campus into my office without a letter. So it's kind of a scrambling week for all of us, because I'm actually not anywhere near my office. I'm at my parents' house, 200 miles away from my office, and working from my parents' house, where I can kind of keep an eye on my parents, and it's a very rural area of Nebraska. It's very, very small. In fact, before we started this, I'm like, I don't know if I can record today because there was a tractor in the field and behind the house. And I'm like, well, it's making a lot of noise, but it's gone away now. So, but it's just I do have one full-time job and two, I guess you would call, side gigs. And one of my side gigs technically could be considered essential is that I deliver groceries.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and so I've been making a little extra money on that. I won't lie. It's been, but it's also it's a little scary out there when you go into the stores and you're like, huh, all right, well, Schrodinger's human. We'll see who has it, who doesn't have it, who doesn't know they have it. It's kind of like, don't know. So. A little bit of faith, right?
Well, so
it's pretty stressful there too. Yeah.
David, you probably don't have to don a mask to do your job, but Deborah probably should be doing that for her job.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun thing. And before we get into the serious stuff, and this could probably wait, but I'm going to tell you right now, is that a friend of mine, a Disney friend of mine, and I are talking about the next time we go to Disney, are we going to have matching Disney masks? So we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about that in when we start talking about what's going to happen after everything opens.
I'm positive some enterprising soul has already put those up on Etsy.
Oh, yes, there are, and they're kind of pricey. But I'm like, ooh, I want that pattern, and I might pull the trigger on a few of them.
It'll be like the new Magic Band. Yeah. So let's dive right into this conversation about kind of the reality, and I think we can all look at the industries that we work in and see, I feel like when I wake up on looking at Facebook or Twitter every day, I sort of brace myself for updates on people who have lost loved ones to the virus. I'm seeing those regularly on my social media feeds, and also people whose jobs have been impacted. David, are you seeing that in where you are with your connections?
I know some people who haven't officially lost anyone to it yet. I know some people who think they may have had it and are feeling better now after a couple of weeks, but of course some people can't get tested, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
So we're just and there's some of my family members that we're kind of watching like a hawk who have pre-existing lung conditions. So just I know people who are at risk or may have had it but aren't sure about for the most part.
And Deborah, you had shared in offline conversations that you're hearing directly from friends. We read in the media this last week about furloughs at Disney. Can you give us a little bit more of a kind of idea of what that looks like? Is that everybody that works at the Disney parks?
No, just like every other. Oh, sorry. It's just like every other company. It's certain essential employees will still be there, but they're basically they're taking away people whose jobs are non-essential, meaning more of the creative field, people who are, their sole purpose is to serve guests that aren't at the parks right now. So a lot of salaried cast members, so people who get a monthly, every amount every month, people who are part of like the attractions, the people, hourly cast members who are not union. That's so the union employees are, if you're part of the work unions that are in Florida, you're somewhat protected, but if you're not, you have to go on furlough. And then I think for the most part, I would say probably 75% of the workforce at Disney will be going on furlough on the 19th of April.
And pardon my ignorance, but does furlough basically mean that you're just not getting a paycheck and then you're, well, there's a nice train for us.
Sorry,
and then no, that's good. Well, and arriving at Main Street Station. No, does that mean that you? I'm so obviously self-employed. Does that mean that basically when this is over, they reserve the right to call you back and stick you right back into your job, or do you have to reapply, or how does that work?
For the most part, what furlough means in Disney's sense is that the cast members will still have insurance, believe it or not. They'll still get their benefits. They just won't get a paycheck. But then, yes, when they get to the point where I imagine they'll be calling people back in stages. So when it's time to go back into your role, they'll call everybody back, because guess what? They also lost about a sixth, if not, well, it's probably 20% of their employees. They actually outright canceled their contract. So it was a college program. So people who were doing international, like Disney has its own international exchange program. So they call them cultural ambassadors. And then they also have every college and university in the United States. They tap 10 to 20 people from those college, every semester to come down and work and earn a little bit of extra internship credit and a little job experience. And it's I went through that program twice, the Disney College program.
So when you get canceled in that, it impacts you not only financially, but those are students whose college curriculum is being impacted by this. Did you hear anything about, if you're doing this and it's meant to mean a semester's worth of credit, are those kids still getting that credit, or do they just, how does that work?
Well, they're just saying that they're telling all of the colleges that, yes, they completed their courses, their coursework, and that it was okay. So they're giving them kind of a, here you go, we understand now. Because, the problem with those college programs students is that they all live together in dormitories, like if you were on a college campus. So they were all living in Disney provided housing, and Florida was like, you can't do that. So they had to send them all away, which is, for some of them it was hard because they didn't, they had to fly overseas, and at that time it was hard to get overseas. And, so there was a big scramble with regular cast members to give people a place to stay, so that they had until they could figure something out. Some of the cast members who were living in Central Florida were opening doors for these college program students to stay until they could figure out a way to get home.
And they obviously will be unlikely to just, when things open back up, perhaps in June, they're not going to come back and pick up where they left off necessarily.
Right.
Wow.
They suspended that program through June. So if the people were hired to come this summer, they probably are not going to be able to do that this summer, which means Disney might have a lot, because those cast members tended to do food and beverage. Those cast members did, the serving portions. They did most of the frontline, I guess, greeting portions, running attractions. So that's one of the things that they might need to hire more people prior to park opening to adjust for the loss of those frontline cast members.
And I know essentially that, like, having visited places like Epcot, that, when you go to the kind of international pavilions in Epcot, that the flavor that you get is probably largely from those international students who are serving in those places.
That's correct. A lot of those were for what we call the cultural ambassadors, meaning that they come from Disney, goes to their country, recruits them, they serve a year, and then they go back to their country. So those students are probably back in their countries right now as well.
Wow.
And I don't know how that's going to impact Epcot's reopening. Granted, they could probably find enough people to fill the roles that needs to be filled, but they won't be cultural representatives probably until fall.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, David, do you have any sense in where you're living? Like, are they giving you a sense of when things might return to normal? Or, I mean, is it just sort of walking into the abyss?
Normal's pretty relative at this point. Everything is, everything, at least in this area, is pretty much down until a lot of things have just said till early May. So I'm not, some people have said till April 30th, but I'm based on the overlapping timelines, I'm assuming, like, best case, they might see some gradual easing of things, of restrictions in May. That if someone just said, okay, everything's open for business again all at once, I'm not sure how well that'll work. we're all kind of hoping that there'll be like some kind of gradual easing of openings in May or June.
Can I say something that's really odd, and I
in.
don't have any. I don't as of us recording this podcast, and it's so my father is an over the road truck driver. He works for himself, and so he was in Florida last week. This week he went to Washington State, so he basically cross country. And today he's in Wyoming. He's going to be back sometime this afternoon to celebrate Easter with us. And he said all the cafes are open now in Wyoming. They opened them today.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and I can't substantiate that claim. He just says that's the signs he's seeing right now as he's crossing Wyoming, is that they're opening cafes back up because, well, Wyoming, let's face it, it's a little bit like Nebraska. It's kind of sparsely populated, and maybe they can afford to do that. I don't know, but it's interesting. And I hadn't had time to look it up. He just called me 2 hours ago and said, yeah, cafes are open.
Wow. So, Deborah, go ahead, David.
I would say, that's one of the interesting things about Nebraska. Like Deborah said, it's pretty sparsely populated. So there's, I'm in Omaha, which is the most populous part of the country, of the state, I mean. And so it's locked down similar to what a major city would be like, whereas if you're like in David City or Chadron or something, probably not so bad. So in Nebraska, there isn't like there's more strict measures depending on where you live in Nebraska.
Yep. And it's actually town by town. Okay, so I know this is not Secrets of Disney, but so my parents live in a town of 200 people. And I bank in a town 7 miles to the west, which is a town of like 1,200 people. And then we go to church in a town 6 miles to the east, which is a town of like 900 people. And so I went to go get a few things from the grocery store, and everybody in there was wearing masks, which I thought was odd for as rural as this part of the country is. And then yesterday we went to go work on some stuff at church, and I ran into the grocery store on that side, and nobody was wearing masks, and they all looked at me because I was wearing a mask. And I was like, wow, that is a strange dichotomy. That's like a 6 mile difference.
Yeah,
it was weird.
So, I mean, you guys can't even begin to imagine what it's like here in Los Angeles. So, to circle back to the Disney thing for just a minute, Deborah, I wanted to ask you, do you have a sense? I wondered about this, and then I think I saw that Disney security and probably landscapers are still working. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah.
That there's still like bare bones essential personnel in the parks?
So, let me just break down, like I was thinking about this the other day, and like who's going to be essential. So yes, first and foremost, it will be Disney security. Most of my Disney security friends have not been furloughed. And back when I was hired into security oh my gosh, that was almost 20 years ago. They said, if tomorrow Disney were vaporized into a pile of dirt, they'd still need people to guard that pile of dirt. So because
we own that dirt,
right? Exactly. So there, security will always be the last cast members to be working at Disney, and then of course you get the people who manage the cast members and the people who make policies. So like the senior management and all those kind of people. And then you have landscaping and engineering, so people who fix things. And like you might get a skeleton crew at the hotels of front desk managers and housekeeping managers who will make sure that supplies are being ordered, that everything's ready for when the parks actually do open back up. So there are probably a few essential employees that are like within every department, so to speak, but then mostly it'll be what they use on Graveyard, which is security and engineering and skilled labor to fix things. Because right now would be a good time to make sure the park is extra clean and everything's fixed and everything's freshly painted and ready to be opened.
Yeah, that's so.
All those repairs they never had a chance to.
Right. Right.
Yeah. My husband keeps saying, I don't understand why they're not out on the 405 freeway fixing
the highways
when we have a third of the traffic that we usually have. Well, that's so interesting. I mean, I definitely, when we talk about the intersection between fun and faith here, I think, it's a good reminder just to say extra prayers, not only for health and safety of everybody, but also for all the families that have been financially impacted by this thing, that, we find a way to work together to bounce back as quickly as possible, and that we, look at ways to support those who are in need. And Deborah, I want to thank you for kind of sharing that inside perspective on what that's like there. In the time that we have left, I think it would be fun to pivot for just a minute to something that's not so depressing as we talk about fun things. And so we all figured out that we all have Disney Plus. And so let's talk about what we're watching on Disney Plus and what we recommend. David, you guys have it in your home, right?
Oh, yes.
Is it getting a lot of use these days of quarantine?
It's actually getting. We don't know how much longer we'll be fortunate enough for this, but we have a couple days a week. We have a person who watches our kids for a few hours during the day, and then they come back here. It's the only place they can go, but it's there and back. But they've got to see Onward now, Frozen 2, and so now they'll see those here now too. And I'll have my old favorites playing in the background randomly while because I just like background noise. But I've had Gargoyles on repeat for quite a while. And the old Spider-Man and his amazing friends from the 80s, pretty much all the superhero.
So you have that going on while you're working.
Some people are wired to have things running in the background while they're working on something, and for some odd reason it helps them focus. I'm one of those people.
I admire your ability to multitask. I'm the opposite of that. I have to have like babbling brook or crackling fire sounds, no words. How about you, Deborah? What are you watching on Disney Plus?
I was just impressed, and that's one of the weird things that came out of this pandemic is that Onward, which was slated for theater release this month, went straight to Disney Plus. And well, not straight, because there was like a week or two where you could buy it and have it streamed for $20, which I thought was fine. I would have probably paid that. But I did watch Onward, and I try not to do it while I'm working because I can't tune out movies as much as I'm like you, Lisa. I need something that either I have heard 20 million times, like, oldies music or classical music or something that I can kind of tune out. But if it's words like podcasts, I can't do that. I can't do new movies while I'm working. Otherwise, I just can't focus. So if I'm going to go Disney Plus, I am probably going to go classic Disney. Like I watched The Jungle Book. I watched one of my favorites, which is Saludos Amigos. I watched I watched a whole bunch of really bizarre, like I would say not bizarre because they're a classic Disney old like short stories like Ichabod and Mr. Toad, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And
you're doing a deep dive.
I know. I just can't get into the new stuff. Apparently, I'm getting to that age, and so I've been doing. If I'm watching Disney Plus, it's usually the classic Disney stuff, or shorts, or it's mostly animation, and occasionally a Marvel movie. I am still trying to catch up on my Marvel movie watching.
David, did you watch Onward with your kids?
I did not yet. Just the one thing is about this whole current schedule is that we don't get except for the weekends, we don't get to watch a lot together because kids have even though they're not in school, they still have school work. So when I pick them up, we still have like an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of stuff to do at night, and then it's bedtime. So hoping to watch some stuff with Disney, some actual new things. Just like Deborah, I just watch background things. I can't watch anything new right now, and I'm hoping to watch something new with them soon. But like we do classwork. My kids are 4 and 7, but we're still doing classwork. My daughter is doing her dance class via Zoom right now, so I had to learn how to turn our kitchen into a dance studio. So our evenings are kind of packed. There's not a lot of down veg time.
Deborah, have you seen it yet? Onward?
I watched it once. Well, actually twice. I watched it once where I was kind of half paying attention, and then twice I'm like, oh, I need to go back to the beginning and kind of see what's going on. And did you watch it, Lisa?
I've watched half of it, and to tell you the truth, I sort of like I don't know. I just wasn't like I wasn't really feeling it, and so I need to go back and watch it because it's had a ton of positive buzz, but it didn't grab me right from the start.
Well, I got to say, so I have a friend who lives in Central Florida. He's not a Disney cast member, but his goal is to watch 100 movies a year.
Wow!
So he's a big, and then he writes these detailed descriptions in his personal review of the movies. And I read his Onward one, and I totally agreed with him, which is it was a good movie, it was entertaining, but it wasn't, a blockbuster movie like what we're used to seeing, like Moana or Frozen or anything like that. But it was fun to watch. And here's my overarching take, and that's probably, if you want to tell us, dear listeners, what your thoughts of Onward was if you watched it, and see if you agree with me about this point, which is it feels like the answer to the Harry Potter conundrum. Meaning, it's our version of Harry Potter, in a sense. It's like, we can't compete with Harry Potter Empire that Universal Studios has, but maybe we can create something similar that has kind of a magical feel to it. And, that way we can maybe spin off on it and, and have, cute little spells and wizarding kind of stuff.
But
so
that, of course, has a dead parent. I guess Harry Potter has a dead parent.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is like, okay, when I first turned it on, I was like, oh, yeah, their dad's going to be dead. Sure enough. Disney, that's like I hate to say it, it would be almost too controversial, except for in one instance, one movie that I can recall where the parents have been divorced or getting divorced, or they live in, our dad has gone somewhere else, and that was Toy Story. So we don't know what happened to Andy's dad. We can just assume that he's no longer in the picture. Whereas this, it's like, well, what if this were a divorced family? How would it change the dichotomy? Well, Disney doesn't want to touch that yet, which is weird. So it's just easier to say that dad, was a good guy and he died in some, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But it's, yeah, I don't know.
Well, the reason that I have not seen it is because I spent all of my screen time, my elective screen time last week, totally binge watching Encore.
Oh, really?
Encore, yes. So Encore is an original Disney Plus series, and what it does is it goes back to people's high school musicals, and it reassembles the cast of your high school musical. So they went to like 12 different high schools around the country. I think the most recent kind of class that was assembled was from 2008. And then it went all the way back to one class that was from the 70s. And they redo in a week their high school musical. And it is... I mean, it's like I cannot stop watching it. And I think I must have needed a good cry because I pretty much cried in every episode. So if you like musical theater, they go through lots of the, great kind of like classic musicals. And it's just really, really fun. So that's what I was watching. And I'm also watching out for Call of the Wild, which I heard is coming soon, but I haven't actually... I haven't seen it on the platform yet, but Call of the Wild is something that I covered right before it came out. And if you have a chance to watch it on Disney Plus, you definitely should. It was really good. Very, very good.
Hey, were you planning to cover Onward? Were you like going to a release?
No. It's weird. The interesting thing, so Call of the Wild was Fox. And so it was acquired when Disney acquired Fox. The project was acquired. Mm. And the way those junkets work, they bring you as journalists to a junket at a hotel in Beverly Hills, and typically it's just one film. But interestingly, they combined the two junkets. So that day, half the journalists were there covering Onward, and I was covering Call of the Wild. So you kind of got either or. So because I got to meet Harrison Ford that day, I was quite happy to be on Call of the Wild. So,
that's so cool.
It was very cool. So yeah. Well, we want to hear from you guys. If you've been watching something on Disney Plus, definitely let us know what your favorites are. Whether you're old school like Deborah Schaben, or classic Marvel like David Handlos. David, if you did have a spare hour or two, what would you want to watch?
If I wanted to watch something, to be honest, sounds weird, but I'd want to watch that Disney's Gummy Bears with the kids.
I love that.
I found the theme song for that once on YouTube, and they're like, oh, we want to see that, because it's just this little just the intro and that's it. But now it's on. I think it's on Disney Plus now, and like now I really want to watch that with them.
Well, there you go.
I think that's one of Disney's better made animated series. Like I really do, and it was so much fun to watch that growing up. And I'm sitting here singing the theme song in my head too.
Yes.
And I'm not going to sing it for y'all, but.
Ear candy. And Deborah, what's on your wish list for this week if you get a chance to sit down and watch something?
Oh, actually, it's not. This is so not Disney. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I brought home a documentary called Love and Mercy, which is about Saint Faustina. And yeah, so, and about the Divine Mercy. And I've been trying to get my mom, like, come on, let's watch this together. And so far she's like, I don't have time. So that's actually on my list of things I want to watch this week, because it's Easter week and I feel like that's where I want to go. But I am now going to totally check out Encore, because when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that looks like a teen story. That looks like something that's not necessarily for 40-year-olds to watch. And now that you mentioned what it is,
I want affirmation that one thing that it caused me to do, this is so crazy, but I was actually just in the ensemble for my senior musical, which was the music band. But my high school class, at our last reunion, which was I think our 35th reunion, we had 300 people from our class at that reunion. And some of the main organizers of it were people that were in the senior musical. And so we have a really active Facebook group. So I went on there and said, everybody needs to watch this. And then one of our classmates actually burned DVDs of our senior musical and sent it out to a bunch of us. So that is what I will be watching this week. The 1981 Mater Dei High School production of The Music Man.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite musicals. That's awesome.
There you go. Well, it's not on Encore, but if you like that genre, there's lots of other good ones there.
I'd be afraid if I got put on there. I was Society Max and Guys and Dolls.
Oh, there you go.
That's
what would
awesome.
happen if you had to reprise your role?
Well, I mean, it was like an ultimate bit part with one line, but I just had to stand there and mug for the audience most of the time.
Oh, that's so cool. My high school musical for my senior year was The Sound of Music, and I had the only non-singing role, which is the maid.
Oh,
Frau Schmidt.
That's actually it's one of the very first episodes is The Sound of Music. So you'll love watching that one. So.
Oh, very cool.
Well, guys, we are actually short on time this week, and we want to let you get back to whatever it is that's keeping you busy during the quarantine time. And we want to wish you all the best. And I'm really grateful, Deborah, especially to you for sharing kind of on this difficult topic and giving us, some perspective there. So thanks so much for that.
Well, it's when we first talking about this subject, it was like, oh, I'm so depressed, because I do have friends who are furloughed and they have families and they have responsibilities. So it's really a hardship for a lot of people in Central Florida right now. So I'm glad we're kind of addressing it, because it's like, oh, it can't always be sunny and fun and all that. Sometimes we have to have a little dose of reality, and this is it. Yeah. And we'll talk about fun stuff later, like when it reopens and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I agree though that it's important to acknowledge this period in time that we're going through, and it reminds us to stay close to one another in the ways that we can, and to look around us for people who need help and love and support. So that's what it's all about. So, well, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who've made it possible for us to create The Secrets of Disney. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Disney podcast and all the shows that we run over at StarQuest. And you can thank them and join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We want you to be sure to subscribe to our show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or honestly, wherever you listen, or on the SQPN YouTube channel at YouTube. You can find previous episodes of our conversations, including those that Deborah held before David and I joined her, at sqpn.com/Disney. And you can email us directly at disney@sqpn.com. That's where we want to hear your feedback on what you're watching or your favorite trip or what you love about Disney. And you can follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN. We're going to be back next time. Who knows what we'll be talking about? I'm sure we'll find something totally awesome. Do you have a suggestion?
I do. I would like to talk about, I'm sure by then we will have more information about what the reopening of the parks will look like. So I'd like to talk about how we're all going to re-enter society after, especially at Disney, because there's actual Disneyland in Shanghai is actually open right now. So I'd like to discuss that. And maybe.
That sounds so awesome. And
I know, right?
Yeah. And I want to just hear about how good of a dancer David is by the time now that he's got that kitchen dance studio. David, maybe you can show off your dance moves for us the next time that we're together.
This is like my wife had to really work with me for our dance when we got married, and even and way before then in high school. At the end of Guys and Dolls, the only thing that the dance instructor could say is that I got better.
Most improved, David Handlos. Well, there you have it. Well, Deborah and David, thank you so much for joining me on Secrets of Disney. And listeners, thank you too. I am your temporary host, Lisa Hendey. And be sure to join us next time. And thanks so much for listening to Secrets of Disney on StarQuest. And ta-ta for now.